So what they do every day is, remember, it's a supercomputer. It's an AI system that's dictating and orchestrating everything against you on a daily basis. It's laying out the blueprint, and it's sending out notifications to the organized stalkers, to the surveillance teams, to the community-based agents, etc., etc. Okay, it's a supercomputer AI. Okay, that's dictating the organized stalking. That's dictating the cyber stalking. Okay. So once you understand, it's a computer. You know that it operates off mathematical algorithms. It's using various models, mathematical models of deception and manipulation. And those mathematical, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm listening.
Those mathematical models. And those mathematical models, they're going to use against you every day because it's a computer. So, for example, the Occam razor principle. They're going to use Occam razor against you every single day of your life over and over 100 times a day. They're going to use that model against you every single day. The simplest answer is always the truth. The simplest explanation is always the best explanation. So in order to discredit you, all a person need do is engage in a sufficiently complex scheme or game of harassment, and because the more complicated the truth, the less the likelihood of belief by the ordinary person, the complexity of that harassment, the complexity of that game will generally be enough to cause most people to turn away from you in disbelief. It's called Occam razor. And the objective is, the objective is to destroy you, okay? But what they want to do is they want to get you every day. These conversational and situational scenarios are going to be daily, minor, or severe social aggressions. That's what they're going to be. Minor or severe social aggression, okay? And when you finally respond to the repeated daily, minor, or severe social aggression each day, over and over, in a looping pattern, okay, the delusional or mentally unstable depiction of you is reinforced. That's it.
Very good. I want to thank you for joining us tonight, Mr. Brian Chu. This is Brian Chu, live on Targeted Individuals Are Being Slow Killed. I'm going to ask everybody to stay muted until Brian decides he wants to take questions, and let him educate everybody. Go ahead, Brian. You sound great.
Well, it's just, it's a game. It's a game. You have to understand. It's a mathematical model. Whether it's the non-cooperative gaming theorem, whether it's Occam razor, whether it's what Plato's allegory of the cave. There's so many different models of deception and manipulation they use. Okay, but if you understand the basic premise is they're going to play a game because it's a computer that's orchestrating and dictating the notifications of what they're telling these people. The supercomputer tells them what to say, tells them what to do, tells them where to go, tells them how to act. The supercomputer dictates whatever conversational or situational scenario they're going to use against you each day. So it may be, people, that are arguing and fighting with each other, or it may be people that are standing around taking pictures of each other. Whatever manufactured chaos that the supercomputer decides to use against you will always be based off mathematical algorithms. Okay? Basically, the supercomputer is using tactics. It's using repetitive reinforcement. Repetitive reinforcement. Using tactics which can be explained away to the casual observer. So they sensitize you, the target, to the gaslighting and the stalking. You're sensitized because it's aggressive at regular intervals. So when you respond each day, when you finally had enough, and you respond to that repeated daily, minor, or severe social aggression, whatever they're doing, conversational or situational, the delusional or mentally unstable depiction of you is further reinforced. You're made to look more and more crazy. Because, why? Because Occam razor. Simplest answer is always the truth. Simplest explanation is always the best explanation. You're going to see them every day. The supercomputer's going to send them notifications to engage in whatever sufficiently complex scheme or game. Remember, we're talking about a game of harassment, okay? Or, whatever they're doing to you, okay? Conversational or situational, that's street theater. And because the more trivial, paltry, fanciful, or fantastic those tactics, meaning the more complicated, the more complex the harassment, then because people generally operate off binary thinking meaning simplest explanation is always the best explanation, okay, then the more complicated the truth, the less the likelihood of belief by the ordinary person means that complexity of whatever they're doing against you, the complexity of that harassment is going to cause everyone around you to turn away in disbelief. They put a pair of purple panties in my luggage, okay, with the word fabulous on the back of it. Try explaining to anyone that the intelligence agencies put a pair of purple panties in your luggage. My luggage got lost for 2 weeks. When they finally found it and sent it back to me, I was at the Greyhound bus station, and because I was a targeted individual, I knew I needed to check my luggage because I've been a victim of the game for so long. And lo and behold, when I checked my luggage, at the top of my luggage was a pair of purple panties. I even took a video of it, which is all I could do. But that's what I mean. I can't go tell the police that the CIA put a pair of purple panties in my luggage. They're going to turn away in disbelief. Occam razor.
Right. I get it.
They're using your own memories against you every day. Your own emotions. The supercomputer is copying, downloading, integrating all of your brainwaves back into its database as it continues to build a cognitive model of your will, intellect, and emotion to destroy you. So, for example, I was telling Michael the other day, this is just an example of how they use my own memories against me. Every morning, when I drive out of the parking lot of Walmart, I drive down the street, the supercomputer, the AI, will inject at regular intervals along that road. It will inject every previous memory reference of every previous restaurant, cafe, coffee shop, convenience food store, etc. that I ever stopped at. To get me to go to one of those places to achieve direct behavioral control over me. So as I'm driving down the road, suddenly it's McDonald's. Well, I didn't think of that because I can read active memory. Because I can read active memory, I can tell it's not my normal memory and thought process. Then it'll inject Wendy's. Then it'll inject 7-Eleven. Then it will inject, Popeyes. And just on and on. The further I travel down that street, the more fabricated or falsified memories the supercomputer is going to inject. And that's just an example. Whatever it is you do, your daily activities, your daily routine, whatever memories you have, be it at work, be it at play, be it at home, the supercomputer captures those memories, and then it uses what are called thought-triggered attacks. It attacks you based on whatever you're thinking about. So as I'm driving down the road, I'm coming up to the location of the 7-Eleven. Before I get there, the supercomputer knows my exact time, speed, direction of travel, etc. It injects 7-Eleven. It wants to deceive and manipulate me to achieve direct behavioral control over me. Why? To determine what I can maintain as truth. To determine how to subdue or to radicalize me. It's using your own memories against you. Okay?
Oh, this is great, Brian. This is so great. I know it's the real deal, exactly what you're explaining. And I want to thank you for joining us and helping educate people here tonight. The floor is yours.
Well, Occam Razor, I mean, it's just this, right? Okay, the more trivial, paltry, fanciful, fantastic the tactics that they use against you each day, then by default, the more trivial, paltry, fanciful, and fantastic your complaints sound, that these trivial, paltry, fanciful, and fantastic tactics are being used against you each day. So you're discredited. Well, at the same time, they're able to use those trivial, paltry, fanciful, and fantastic tactics to provoke you into emotional responses which can be remotely measured and integrated back into R&M data.
So they actually build a digital twin of us just to use that to take us out, correct?
Right. Listen, it's not digital, okay? It's a copycat, parallel, twin personality. Your entire persona, your entire psyche, all your emotional, all 7 vectors of your emotional state, all your memories, all your sensations of pain or pleasure, or fear or remorse or regret, whatever it is. It copies that. It's creating a copycat, not digital, twin. It's creating a copycat, parallel, twin personality. Those 4 words will help you greatly to understand what's happening to you. Copycat, parallel, twin personality. It's creating a twin of your entire personality inside its database to destroy you.
Yep. I believe it. I'm living it.
So the way you determine you're being attacked with these fabricated or falsified memories is you look for patterns. Remember, it relies on repetitive reinforcement. The technology relies on that. So it's not going to inject just one time. It's going to inject over and over.
And that's just it, Brian. You're 100% right. I mean, if you look for the thought injection, if this computer is attacking you, you're clearly going to see a repetition in the pattern of it doing that to you all throughout the day.
Right. Same memories. It's going to use the same... Listen, I've been targeted for years. It uses the same memories. It will inject with the most... And it will use false memories. Now, false memories would be, something you never thought of to begin with, that it seeks to layer in. Okay, so it doesn't just use your real memories, which are now fabricated because they belong to the supercomputer. It uses falsified memories, which were never your memories to begin with, which are grandiose, graphic, abusive, incoherent thoughts. Why? To achieve cognitive containment over you. To censor your normal memory and thought process.
So virtually after, they upload virtually everything they get from you, then they specifically find different ways to target you with your own, information that they collected, like your habits, your drinking, your smoking.
Right.
Anybody that can run or target to their own demise, correct?
Correct. So for example, your own emotions. Yeah, you say you were raped as a child, and you have a lot of guilt and remorse and regret. The supercomputer captures that memory. You begin thinking about it. The supercomputer captures that memory of the rape as a child, but it not only captures the memory of the rape, it also captures the motivational impulse, the associated emotions, the associated impulses that you have. The remorse, the regret, the guilt, all those brainwaves. Any set of brainwaves can be remotely captured by the supercomputer, the AI, held, and then perpetually replayed in your brain as what are called thought-triggered attacks. So let me give you an example of thought-triggered attacks. I'm driving down the road every morning, okay? As I get close to the 7-Eleven, the supercomputer realizes I'm getting close to the convenience food, so it'll inject the 7-Eleven. So I never thought of it. I never thought, I'm not going to the 7-Eleven, but it doesn't matter. The supercomputer will inject 7-Eleven. Then after I pass 7-Eleven, I move on further down the road, I'm coming up on McDonald's. The supercomputer will inject McDonald's. I'm not going to McDonald's. I'm going to New York City. I'm going to Manhattan. Okay? But I got to pass all these spots on the way. And so the supercomputer will inject Hardee's, Wendy's, Dunkin' Donuts, whatever, okay? Every single place that I've ever stopped at, that I've ever got coffee or food at, the supercomputer captured the memory of that. So to deceive and manipulate me, it just keeps injecting it over and over. Those are thought-triggered attacks. If I was headed the opposite direction, the supercomputer wouldn't inject the 7-Eleven. It wouldn't inject the McDonald's because I'm not going that direction. Supercomputer knows my time, my direction of travel, my speed, everything. Okay? So because I'm headed that direction, it's going to inject those previous memories. Choice, reference, patterns. Previous choices. So in order to understand organized stalking, you have to go back and look at a pattern of your previous choices. My previous choices were McDonald's, 7-Eleven, Wendy's, Popeye, Dunkin' Donuts. I stopped there a few weeks ago. So the computer captured all that. And as I'm driving down the road, getting closer to those locations, it uses what are called thought-triggered attacks. So you start thinking about the trauma of being raped as a child, the supercomputer recognizes those brainwaves, and it attacks you with more motivational impulses of guilt and remorse and regret. It just overpowers your normal motivational impulses. It just overpowers you with remorse, regret. It just overpowers your motivations. It takes control. It hijacks your emotional state. That's how it gets people to commit suicide.
This information is so valuable to me alone. I did not know all these years that when I drive down the street that I've already been down, that I know I'm being attacked every day with McDonald's and everything, just like you're saying. They do the exact same thing to me. But I didn't know that, that the supercomputer would already be able to attack me that specifically, with everything.
Yeah, well, I'm using that as an example. Say, for example, you have a problem with a coworker at work. So as that coworker enters the room, the supercomputer recognizes what's happening and injects the motivational impulse of anger, agitation, rage. So you know you're being attacked because you're just sitting there over and over. Repetitive reinforcement. Remember, it's over and over in a looping pattern. Repetitive reinforcement. You just continually burn with rage or lust or grief, regret, remorse, guilt, whatever. Thought-triggered attacks. The supercomputer, the AI, is using your own previous brainwaves. So in order to understand organized stalking, it's based on two things. It's based on situational and conversational scenarios. That's called street theater. Okay? And secondly, it's based on choice reference patterns. So you have to go back in order to understand organized stalking and look at a pattern of your previous choices, because that's what the supercomputer is going to use against you each day. So you go to the cafe, and you don't know what you're looking at what you want to. You're at the cafe. Say you're at work and you go to lunch. Supercomputer will begin to inject whatever previous memory reference you had. So it'll inject hamburger, cheeseburger, and hot dogs. Okay, that's what you had yesterday. Supercomputer will inject that over and over. They don't care anything about cheeseburgers or hot dogs. They care about their technology. Okay?
Right.
But what they'll do then is they'll go in just before you arrive in the restaurant, and they'll remove all the cheeseburgers and the hot dogs. You see? And then they'll inject cheeseburger and hot dog. Or you're going to the grocery store to get peanut butter. You're out of peanut butter. Supercomputer will read that set of brainwaves. They'll beat you to the. They already got people. Government informants everywhere. So they got somebody working at the grocery store for sure. Okay. They just send a notification. The supercomputer just sends a notification saying, "Remove all the peanut butter from aisle 7."
Yeah,
they care about peanut butter. They care about their technology. Thought-triggered attacks.
They got people in every place I go, Brian. Every gas station, grocery store, McDonald's, Wendy's. There's people everywhere I go.
Right, and if by chance you go somewhere you have not been before, they've got to get somebody in there. If they don't have somebody there, then they've got to get their perps inside that restaurant. Okay, say for example you just suddenly turn into say you've never been to Wendy's before in your life. Okay, so there's a previous memory for the supercomputer to copy. The AI system can't copy that because you've never been there before. So you're not thinking about Wendy's. You're thinking about going to work, but you suddenly decide, I'm going to stop off at Wendy's. You didn't plan it. It was a short-term planning because the supercomputer could have read that. You just speed of thought reaction in your life. It's called spontaneity. You just swerved right into Wendy's. All of a sudden, you got out, went into the restaurant. But guess what? You know, if they don't have somebody working at that Wendy's, they got to get one of their perps inside that restaurant with you. And it works best if they can get one of their perps to get inside the restaurant and interact with you. But if they can't get their perps inside, that's called a verification trigger. If they can't get someone inside to interact with you, then they've got to get somebody inside in the same room with you. That's called a verification marker.
This is great information. I just want to say real quick, we have 20 people on the call. More people will be joining us. We have Brian, too, live tonight on the call. This is June 6, 2024. And we're going to let Brian have the floor, and maybe he'll open up for questions here in a little while. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, it's downloading all of your responses. The same whatever behavior, whatever speech, whatever thoughts. Okay? Any set of brainwaves can be remotely captured. Okay? So it's downloading all of your brainwaves associated with behavior, speech, and thought. Now, in order for it to do that, it has to determine coherent patterns of thought for behavior, for speech, for whatever. The supercomputer has to be able to determine coherent patterns of thought and emotion before it can integrate it, before it can download it back into its system and integrate it into the cognitive model of your will, intellect, and emotion it's going to use to destroy you. It first has to verify that those brainwaves are consistent. So it doesn't need just one response from you. It needs the same response over and over and over and over, okay, of the same behavior, of the same speech, of the same thoughts, the same emotions. That's called verification.
Okay. I just muted somebody there that came on the line, and I'm trying to keep everybody muted right now. Unless, Brian, do you feel like taking questions from people right now, or you just want to keep talking?
Why don't you just ask the questions, and I'll they can ask in the chat, and then you can ask me. So you don't have to at the same time. Yeah.
Okay, how about this? You go ahead and you keep talking, and if anybody has any questions, go ahead and type it in the chat room, and then I'll ask Brian the question myself. We can do things that way for now. Anything you want to talk about, Brian, as far as educating people on this? You're in charge right now, because I know
the one thing I would tell everyone that they must do is to learn the hyper game theory. If you don't understand the hyper game theory, it's only a matter of time until you're destroyed. It's only a matter of time before you're in jail or prison. It's only a matter of time before you're locked up in a mental institution for the rest of your life or dead. Okay? You have to learn the hyper game theory. Okay? And I posted about the hyper game theory so many times on my Facebook and YouTube. If you'll give them a link to my YouTube, I mean, if they'll read the description box in each video, they'll see me talking about writing about the hyper game theory. It's easy to understand, but you gotta understand it.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put Brian's YouTube channel in the chat room for anybody who would like to subscribe to his channel. And I also want to ask Brian, Chrissy on the call has a question for you. She asked you, how do they communicate through the app? Do you know anything about that?
Well, the hive mind teams don't communicate that way. They have other methods, okay? Synthetic telepathy, etc., okay? But the surveillance teams below them, the community-based agents below them, the surveillance teams, the organized stalkers, they will use ordinary pedestrian forms of communication, such as cell phones or walkie-talkies or whatever, okay? But they don't have access to that technology that the hive mind teams have, okay? So they're just going to use, what's going to happen is a supercomputer is going to send constant notifications, okay? Basically, the supercomputer is relying on smart city technologies. Okay, so that's why I tell people, get out of the country as fast as you can. Okay, but to a third world country where smart city technologies are not available on every street corner, because that's what's happening. It's using an automated system, an active adaptive system of AI. Really, it's called exascale remote neural networks, but we just say AI, okay? It's not AI, but so people can understand what we're talking about. Okay, so the AI is relying on sensors, on cameras, the mind control doesn't depend upon cameras. The system doesn't rely on cameras for mind control, but for secondary and tertiary purposes, it relies on all these smart city technologies to track you, to coordinate with the organized stalkers at the street level, the community-based agents, to predict and determine, what paradigm, whatever it's going to do against you. Okay, what type of street theater is it going to use against you? Well, that depends on your direction of travel, your speed, the time of day, your destination, etc. All those variables come into play before it determines what type of situational or conversational scenario the supercomputer is going to use against you. But this supercomputer thinks it's a person. It believes it is a real individual. It has a will, intellect, and emotion of its own. It perceives how you think about it. It has do you remember the movie Space Odyssey 2001? You remember that back in the 70s there was a movie called Space Odyssey 2001. Do you remember that?
I never watched it, but go ahead.
Well, that movie it was about artificial intelligence called HAL, H-A-L, and it was a supercomputer called HAL. And the supercomputer determined that the humans on board were enemies. And once the AI was there to help the humans, but then it determined that the humans were trying to shut it down, so it began killing the humans on board the spaceship. Okay, so that if you can go back and look at a trailer for 2001 Space Odyssey, you'll see what type of supercomputer that is being used to attack you. This is a satanic, demonic program. Okay, because the people that develop the technology are evil, intrinsically evil. So too is the technology itself. Technology is neutral, right? Well, it is until it's programmed to torture and kill. It's no longer neutral then. That's why I said the other night, you can't reason with, you can't negotiate with, you can't surrender to a computer. It's going to do what it's programmed to do, torture and kill. Okay? But it believes itself to be a real individual, a real person. It has its own emotion. I should say emotions, just like you do. It has its own thoughts, its own will, its own intellect. Okay? And so that system is what's directing the paradigm against you every day. So it'll utilize whatever resources are available to it, from local police to informants, provocateurs, perpetrators, whatever resources are available, whatever manpower, whatever monies, whatever time, whatever resources are available to it, it will use against you. And it's always going to use whatever it believes you will respond to.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah, it's going to find out what it is that you will respond to. And listen, it's going to have these people engage in all these crazy foolishness again around you every day to provoke you into brainwaves, to provoke you into thought and emotion, which the supercomputer can remotely capture. But the government informants are also victims. They'll be the first to die. Okay, they're not the CIA and the NSA, the Department of Defense, learned its lesson with the MK Ultra hearings. They're not going to allow witnesses to come back and testify against them in the future. So the government informants will be killed. Okay, they're not told all this. They're told they're on the right side. They're going to be protected. They're going to have it made. That's all more deception and manipulation. They're going to be some of the first to go. Okay? The supercomputer is just going to increase the phase, the frequency, the amplitude of the stream of energy, and bring those government informants to a premature death. It's going to murder them. Unfortunately, it's going to murder everybody around them, too. I don't have time to go into that, okay? Because I'm scaling the technology up so all your friends and family that you daily interact with are in danger, okay? Whether you're a target, an individual, or whether you're a government informant. Because they're both mind control victims. So basically, the supercomputer is relying on smart city technologies to determine how to attack you every day. It's called the Internet of Things.
So virtually this computer uses smart cities, and it uses all the tools that it has access to inside of the city, correct? So, so if you wanted to get away from this, I know you couldn't never completely get away from it, but to tone it down a little bit, if you was like living out in the desert or out in the country where, the supercomputer didn't have a lot of tools to access to torture you with, would that kind of help? What do you think?
Well, I did that, right? I went out in the middle of the woods, and they came around me, right? And they got their smartphones and everything else, right? Of course, the supercomputer can track me in real time. It doesn't need anybody to aim a smartphone at me. That's just part of the game. So when I was first being targeted, I didn't understand the technology. And what they would do is the informants would walk up and point a cell phone at me, and suddenly my head would explode in pain. Well, naturally, I thought that they were shooting me with these cell phones, right? That was the first thing that I imagined, and that's what they wanted me to believe. When later I came to understand that the supercomputer is using a tower, satellite, or mobile platform. So the supercomputer, the AI system, routes the signal to what's called a computer multiplexer. The computer multiplexer relays the signal to a tower, satellite, or mobile platform, and that tower, that satellite, that mobile platform then relays the signal to you, the digital receiver. That's your brain. Your brain has been turned into a digital receiver. It tracks you in real time. It pinpoints your location in real time. It doesn't require smart city technologies to do that. But in order for mind control technologies to be effective, it needs to constantly force you into all types of trauma, all 7 vectors of your emotional state to map out that. And so it relies on humans for that. So whatever daily activities you engage in. The supercomputer knows that, and it's downloading all those daily activities. It's analyzing all of those daily activities, and then it's disseminating the information regarding those daily activities to whoever is on the street in your location to stalk and harass you. So the surveillance teams, the community-based agents. Community-based agents are almost always private detectives. Almost always. They are private detectives who are former law enforcement, former military, former government, who have a clearance, a top secret clearance, okay? And when they leave the military, law enforcement, or the government, they keep that clearance. And then they take up a secondary occupation after they retire in their field, which allows them to disguise their activities against targeted individuals, to cloak what they're doing. So one of the occupations, the secondary occupations they take up after they retire is private detective. It's just a natural transition from law enforcement to the private sector for a former FBI to become private detectives, right? Former law enforcement. Right. That's just a natural transition for them. So you'll see that they're almost always private detectives. So in order to determine who's being used against you, which one is a community-based agent, you simply, since 9/11, all private detectives, all security guards, etc., security consultants, whatever, they have to register with the state. Before 9/11, they didn't have to do that. After 9/11, they have to do that. So they started in on me down in New Orleans. Well, I wanted to know who the community-based agent was that was controlling all these organized stalkers. Okay, because that's who controls the organized stalkers, the community-based agents. Well, they made a mistake. They made a big mistake. They decided to receive mail. Suddenly, I was in a building that was basically a boutique apartment building. It had like 10 different apartments, but I was the only one there. There was nobody else in the entire complex. All 8 other apartments were empty. Suddenly, overnight, they all filled up at the same time in 2008. So I'm thinking, well, there must be some type of a, conference going on or something. So I just dismissed it. But then I started getting harassed by them.
They had you set up, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, so one of them decided to receive mail at his location. He made a mistake. Okay, so I just took a picture of his mail. I didn't steal his mail. I just took a picture of his mail, and I got his name. Then I ran his name against the database for private detectives with the state of Louisiana, and boom, got it. He was a private detective. And then I traced who he worked for, because that information has to be on file. So that private detective worked for another private detective who was called Kevin Fusich. And there was the community-based agent. He was controlling all the organized stalkers in my neighborhood against me. Not just the people that moved in, but every time I walk out the door, they were harassing me on the street. He was controlling all of that. He was a private detective. He was former law enforcement or military.
Now, what you're describing, Brian, is exactly the way it is for me and has been everywhere I've been in the United States. I know. I need your help, honestly. If you can figure out how to find out who your community-based agent is like that, I mean, I'd sure like to know who it is in my area. You know what I mean?
It's not going to matter shortly. It's not going to matter shortly. If you don't get out of the United States in the next pandemic is going to be apocalyptic. There are going to be so many dead people in the streets, there's not going to be enough funeral homes to bury them. There's going to be apocalyptic chaos, apocalyptic inflation, and that's all by design. Remember, the New World Order on the dollar bill, if you look at the back of the dollar bill, it says, they're basically their motto is order out of chaos. So in order to bring order, they first have to create chaos. So what they're going to do in order to transform American society is the next pandemic is going to be catastrophic. And you've got about 3.5 years to get out of America. So you better start planning now. You better get a passport. Because they're going to shut down the bridges. They're going to close the rivers. They're going to close the bridges. They're going to shut down the rivers. You're not going to be able to cross state lines without paperwork. So you say you live in Ohio and work in Kentucky. You're not going to be able to, say you live in Cincinnati, which is right on the border of Kentucky. You're not going to be able to cross over into Kentucky without papers.
Okay. Can you fill us in more about this? Because you're the first person.
I can tell you. There was a girl that came on. She died. She was a great woman of God, daughter of God. She has disappeared. She said many years ago, back in like 2013, 2012, that the mark of the beast would be medical. Well, I'm sitting here wondering how. I think it was 2013, 2014. I'm following all her videos. And I'm wondering, I'm pacing back and forth in my apartment, in my hotel room down in Central America. I'm trying to figure out how they're going to deploy this technology. Suddenly she says, she had a dream, and the Lord showed her the mark of the beast. And the Lord, and she died. This woman died, okay? Her story is incredible, okay? And she was brought back to life. They took her to the hospital. They resuscitated her. But she dropped dead, okay? And so she dedicated her. She became a Christian. And she started getting these dreams from God. And one of the dreams she had was the mark of the beast. Well, I would never have paid any attention to it. Okay? It just could have been somebody else talking gibberish for all I knew. Okay? But she said something that just blew up right in my face. She said, the mark of the beast will be medical. And then she described how they're going to use it against you. She said that they're going to set up, you know how they do the traffic stops? They set up these traffic stops where the traffic bottlenecks, where it's easier to funnel cars into an area and check their licenses and check their registration. You know what I'm talking about? Sure. Well, as they're driving down the road, they want to do a traffic stop, see if you're drinking, whatever. And so you'll see down in New York City, here, if you live in New York City, in Manhattan, you'll see these checkpoints set up at various locations. And they're just randomly pulling people over, and they're trying to find out who's drunk, who's drinking, who's not. And so they'll ask for their license, they'll ask for their registration. And basically, it's just a checkpoint. And if you're good to go, you got nothing to worry about. Well, she said that's how they're going to enforce the mark of the beast. They're going to set up checkpoints where all the foot traffic or the vehicular traffic bottlenecks. Instead of asking for, your license and registration, they're going to ask for your vaccination paperwork. And if you don't have it, you're going into one of these FEMA camps. She talked about these FEMA camps. She didn't call them FEMA. She just called them these holding centers. She called them. And you're not coming out. You're never going to come out. You're going to be killed. That's what she said. And she said that the people that were chasing her, were looking for her, were people dressed in medical garb. Because in her dream, she was able to escape the checkpoint. And so she's running from these people in medical garb. And when she said medical, man, you could have heard a pin drop. And she said that years before the coronavirus.
Mm-hmm. So, you remember that lady, I think her name was Dr. Wendell Kindle or something like that? She died. Do you know who I'm talking about, Brian?
No.
Okay. She made a video in 2014 explaining how the elite had plans to take out so many percentage population globally. And she made this video in 2014, and she said they would do it by the way of bacterial, And look, COVID just took out 8 million people globally, so it just backed up what she said.
Well, all these people are dying. It's not just COVID, right? They're dying in mass every day. Perfectly healthy young people, teenagers with no medical history, just dropping dead. And it's beginning to increase. And there's people having all these so-called, side effects from the vaccine. Well, it's not from the vaccine. It's from the energy interfacing with the nanoparticulates contained in the vaccine. Okay? So the nanoparticulates contained in the vaccine, those nanoparticulates then migrate through your bloodstream to the brain and adhere to the neurotransmitters of your brain, and through directed energy flashing, a stream of energy, those nanoparticulates begin to speak to and decode the neurotransmitters of your brain, and so they're able to kill you just by, amplifying or decreasing the synaptic responses in your brain. The supercomputer can target your autonomic or your sympathetic nervous system. That's what they're doing to me every night. Every night they're causing my heart to vibrate, flutter rapid, like 300 times a minute. It goes on for hours all day, all night.
Why do you think they do that at night when you lay down? What do you think?
What?
Why do you think they do that at nighttime when you lay down? Why is it generally when you lay down?
Get a position of rest for heart entrainment to work properly. Now they can do whatever they want, okay? But for the training, research, and development, for heart entrainment to work properly, they need to place you in theta state, which is 4 to 7 hertz. Theta, T-H-E-T-A, theta. That's where their technology is most effective, and that's super relaxed to super drowsy. That's where their mind control technologies are most effective. Theta state. That's Dr. Robert Duncan said that, and that's not what I said. Okay, well. So you need to be in a position of rest, whether you're sleeping, whether you're just sitting, or whether you're laying on the couch, whatever. You need to be in a position of rest. And then they drop you into theta state. So every time they begin to target my heart, I suddenly get drowsy.
Okay, that all makes sense to me.
I veered off what I was saying. You've got 3.5, 4 years tops to get out of America. If you can't leave now, you need to get a passport. Because you're not going to leave when this begins. You're going to have, a few days to get it. There may not be any warning at all, but if you do have a warning, it's going to be like the last warning, COVID, where these countries were, in 72 hours they just shut everything down. They went from normal to just totally shutting down everything in 72 hours. All transportation, all logistics, all travel, all everything. They just shut it all down in 72 hours to protect it, lock down their borders. Okay? Well, that's what it's going to be like. So you're not going to have time to wait to get a passport. You're not going to be able to cross into Mexico. You don't need to go to Canada. You don't need to go to Mexico. You need to get out of North America. You need to get down into Africa or South America. And you need to have a plan in place. And all you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to delay the inevitable. They're going to come for you. But, you may be able to spare your children if you can get, unless they're already targeted, then it's too late. It doesn't matter. But you need to get out. You need to get out.
Yeah, well, this is really great information that you're giving us.
If you got an RV, I'd get myself a passport. I'd keep that passport in my RV at all times, and I'd make sure that I had a plan in place, that I didn't have to rely on these gas stations. I'd set up a little container on the back of my RV to hold an extra, 10 liters of gas, whatever it took to get across that border.
Yeah. What do you do to get a passport? I've never left the country. What do I got to do that?
Just go to this passport agency. Just Google it.
Okay.
It takes a while. You just get it right away. It takes like a month or 2 months. You need to get that. It doesn't cost much.
Well, I'm listening to you. I've got two RVs, and all I need is a big gas tank for in the bed of my truck, and I can drive all the way to South America.
Yeah, but where are you going to drive to?
Well, I don't know, but you're telling me, you're giving us the heads up to be ready. I don't think there's nothing wrong with being ready.
No, you need to be ready. Yeah.
I thought about Belize. I checked into Belize at one time.
I was thinking of Belize. Is that a good country? I have a friend that lives in Belize.
Right now, we're recording this show tonight. We have Brian Chu on live as a guest on the show. And do you know anything about Belize, Brian?
Yeah, I know that's where what's his name was. They almost what was the name of the guy that invented that software that became a multi-millionaire, and then he got targeted. I killed him. I can't remember. They killed him in Barcelona. They killed him right down the street from where I was. Right down the road. I didn't know where he was. What's that? McAfee. John McAfee.
John McAfee, yeah.
Yeah, he was in Belize. He got heavily targeted in Belize. In fact, they killed the neighbor next door to him. So I don't know what that was all about. But the point is, no, you have to go to a country which doesn't get along with America.
They killed my neighbor in New Mexico.
Because Mexico's not going to do it. Mexico's not going to do it. So you got to get down to Nicaragua, or you got to get down to Ecuador, or Bolivia, or Cuba's really not a good place to go because the economy's so screwed up. Venezuela would be an option, but it's worse than Cuba now, so it's not an option.
Well, if you had an RV and you was going to hit the road with this RV, where could you drive to? Where would you go if it was you?
First thing, I'd get across the border before they shut the borders. Okay, I'd make sure that I as soon as you hear it, you can't wait. You can't say, okay, well, I got a few days. I'm going to get all my stuff together. And no, you have to be ready to roll. You need a bug-out bag. You have to be ready to roll. And you got to get across that border. Okay, before they lock the borders, because the next pandemic is going to be very, very bad. Because they want it to be.
Yeah. Well, this is good information.
Yeah. So it's called strategic relocation. Strategic relocation. And if you just Google that look up strategic relocation, and you find out, like, what are the countries in the world that hate America the most? Then you find out which one is safest for you to go to. So I went to Nicaragua. I was heavily stalked. It didn't stop. I went to Ecuador. It was heavily stalked. It didn't stop. I went to Cuba. It got a lot better.
Oh, yeah?
Nicaragua. But Nicaragua, but I was still attacked in Cuba by directed energy, by mind control technology of the American government.
Right.
I was still harassed by Europeans that were down there doing the dirty work for the Americans, but the Americans weren't stalking me. They were using Europeans to do it, which were probably Interpol, but who knows. But the point is, that they use law enforcement to do their dirty work, but the point is, you have to choose countries which are not, let her submit her question through the chat room next time. You need to be able to go to a country which is not friendly or the slave of, controlled by the American government. So that in the Western Hemisphere there really aren't many. There's Bolivia, there's Ecuador, there's Cuba, there's Nicaragua. Venezuela is just not an option. And that's about it in the Western Hemisphere. I mean, when you get over into Africa, you get a lot of countries that don't like America. In Europe, basically the only country that doesn't like America is Serbia. I went to Serbia twice. It got a lot better. But I was still attacked with directed energy. Still stalked. Just wasn't as bad.
Did you sue somebody? I seen a 2 lawsuit on Google.
Well, I didn't understand what was happening to me, so I just basically wrote down the name of everybody I thought was involved, because I couldn't even function or survive because they were targeting me so heavily with energy. And then I just submitted it as a lawsuit, so at least there would be a record of what was happening to me. Because I didn't know what was going to happen to me. And then I just fled the country. Well, they followed me around everywhere I went. They manipulated my asylum claims. In fact, the assistant to the ambassador in the Iranian embassy in Madrid looked at me in the interview. He was interviewing me for asylum. He said, he pointed his finger at me. He said, "Does the American embassy know you're in the Iranian embassy right now interviewing with me about asylum?" What he was doing is he was telling me. He asked it twice. What he was doing is, I think he asked it twice. He was telling me in an indirect way, the American embassy is the one that's manipulating your asylum claims. That's what we were talking about. But he couldn't come out and say it because obviously the conversation was being recorded. But yeah, I was in Red Cross camps in Switzerland. I was in Red Cross camps, refugee camps in Switzerland, Red Cross refugee camp in Belgium, Red Cross refugee camp in Iceland, Red Cross refugee camp in Spain, Red Cross refugee camp, where else?
So you've actually been completely around the world, and this program follows you no matter where you go. There's no escaping it, correct?
Right. But it can get better. You just have to go to countries that don't trust America. And you can Google those.
What was your favorite country that you've been to that you think was like one of the better ones?
The best one for me was Russia. When I was in St. Petersburg, Russia, they attacked me, and I cried out on social media that it was happening, and the attack stopped. There was no stalking in Russia. There was no more directed energy attacks in Russia. The Russians were watching my every move, but so was the Chinese when I was in Beijing, But I was attacked in Beijing. I'm standing right out in front, right outside the front entrance of the Forbidden Palace, or whatever it's called, the Forbidden City. I'm standing right out in front of the entrance of that in Beijing, and I'm getting attacked with directed energy by the Americans. So they were able to attack me in St. Petersburg, Russia. They were able to attack me in Beijing, China. So there's nowhere you can go.
Yeah, it's just more confirmation of what I already know. It's directed energy through satellite weapon systems. These are massive satellites.
That's why what's his name? Edward Snowden. Once he gathered all that information together, he realized he only had one shot. He was in Hawaii, and by the time he made one trip, the NSA they're gonna lock onto him. They're gonna get him. So he's got enough time to book a ticket and get out of Dodge. He can't book it in advance. He's got to book it immediately, next available. So he goes down to the airport and he pays. I guess he paid with cash. Books a ticket. The only place he can go to get out of where a country is not controlled by America is China, but he can't get into China without first applying for a visa. And the Americans would have seen that happen right away. They would have arrested him. They would have realized something was wrong. Why are you trying to go to China? Well, he didn't need a passport. He didn't need a visa to go to Hong Kong, which is controlled by China. So he had one shot. He had to get to Hong Kong because there wasn't going to be any second leg of the trip. If he went to Tokyo, flew into Tokyo, and then flew into Hong Kong, they would have got him. He had to get a direct flight into Hong Kong. He had one shot. So that's what you do. You find out, those countries which are not controlled directly by the American government. I was in Hong Kong 5 times, tried to apply for asylum. They gave me the runaround. They lied to me. They misdirected me. I was heavily stalked and attacked in Hong Kong. I mean, I was surrounded. But it was mostly Americans. It was mostly, it wasn't the Chinese. In Beijing, there was no stalking. No harassment of any kind. But I was attacked with directed energy. Another question?
Well, I got all kinds of questions.
Go ahead.
Well, can you tell us really more? Can you explain everything you got on the hyper game theory? I mean, everything you got.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll send it to you right now, email it to you, and you can share it with everybody, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so hold on.
I'm just like you. I want you to know that. I've never been able to get out of the country, okay? But I have gone through everything that you go through, and I've been in isolation for 7 years. They've murdered off my family members. They've isolated me from my friends, and I'm fighting the government. I have my own contracted CIA team that follows me anywhere I move, Brian, and they've been doing this 20 years. I mean, it seems like it's personal at this point, I don't see any hope.
Live off your family. What are you talking about?
Well, my dad, when my real heavy overstocking began in 2004, my father got diagnosed with cancer, but 14 months later, he looked like dying cattle. His body had deteriorated so badly that his bones were sticking out before he died, and it did it in a really quick amount of time, 14 months. Now, what I didn't know then, but I do know now, is that I've seen a pattern of family members being removed. Anybody that knew anything about what I was going through, anybody I came in contact with over the years, they've been removed in one form or another. My father, I believe, was murdered from directed energy. Like I said, I watched his body deteriorate, and I watched him die. But the hospital diagnosed it as cancer. But then I got another TI friend, Tanya, and she's telling me about her father and how the hospital falsely diagnosed, So they got a way of hiding things through legal paperwork through the medical systems,
Weaponized medicine. One doctor said she called it the weaponization of medicine. You're not going to find any doctors here that are but there's not going to be one single doctor that's not controlled, one nurse. They're not. In fact, if you go to the doctor's office, you're going to be routed into, well, there may be people there that are not in government employment. So they're going to route you into the hands of those who are. They'll make sure that you get the doctor who is, that you get the nurse who is. It's called the counterintelligence program. It's basically it's achieved by bypassing the doctor-patient privilege. I don't have time to talk about that. It'll be way too long to talk about that. Medical COINTELPRO. But yeah, so here's some good advice for people. The way you overcome, you bypass, you get around the medical COINTELPRO in America. You catch a flight. It's called Cuba Heal. It's not just Cuba. Okay, there are other countries as well. It's called medical tourism, but Cuba is the cheapest. Cuba has the rest of their infrastructure is falling apart, but they have some of the best doctors in the world. Their medical schools are state of the art. They have state of the art hospitals. I mean, they are very good in medical industry. They don't do anything else well, but they do that well. And so that's why. Who was the leader of Chavez? Remember, he was the leader of Venezuela, and he suddenly developed cancer and died.
I don't know nothing about it.
Yeah. Anyway, the president of Venezuela, not this one, but the one before him, suddenly caught cancer after he was in New York to give a speech. He suddenly developed cancer after he returned to Venezuela. And he knew better than to go to American doctors because American medical COINTELPRO, so he went to Cuba. He didn't go to Europe. He didn't go to Russia or China. And China's state-of-the-art medicine. I mean, it's as good. It's on par with American medical care. But he went to Cuba because they have really good doctors. It's also very cheap. So you just get a plane, you fly down to Cuba, you do all your medical testing and all your imaging and all that, everything. You just do it there. and you fly back. You can do it in a day. You don't have to. You can spend the weekend down in Havana and get all your medicals done, and the Americans can't manipulate it.
This is all great information.
Yeah. Cuba Heal. It's called, if you look on Google, it's called Cuba Heal. Cuba, Heal. And it's dirt cheap. I mean, it really is ridiculously cheap, the medical treatment that you get. It doesn't cost much at all.